spirit rest upon all, Jew or Gentile, man or woman, in consonance with their deeds. The creation of one Adam promotes peace. No one can claim, my ancestry is nobler than yours. There is no monopoly on holiness. There is no truth with devotion and commitment. We must unite in working now for the sovereignty of God. God is near to all who call upon him in truth. There can be disagreement without disrespect. As children, let us not be guided by ignorance, or let lives of holiness illuminate all of our paths. The hand of God is extended to all who seek him. Let our deeds reflect that we share the image of God. Revere the eternal, speak one to another, leading everyone to acknowledge the splendor of God.
We're going to turn back in our Siddur to page 46. We'll start with the Chatzi Kaddish and go immediately into the...
Please rise.
Please rise. Yikadal v'yikada shemei rabba v'yomad divrach yirutei v'yamlik malchutei v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayedecho beit Yisrael ba'ala uv'izman kariv v'meru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach Amalo me'amaya yiparach, yiparach v'yishtabach, v'yipa'av v'yitlomam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal, shemei dekud brichu, li'ela min kol bechata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, Damira be'oma v'yimeru amen.
Ose shalom imromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kru amen. Ose imeru amen. Ose shalom imromav hu yaseh shalom Aleinu ve'imeru amen.
developments in church and state separation that would be of interest to the Jewish community. The Ten Commandments and the First Amendment. Please.
Thank you, and Shabbat Shalom. Tell me, our founding fathers worried about freedom, and they did for a good reason. They knew all two things can do to each other and start acting like the civil authorities. The authors of the Constitution had their roots in England, and they knew their history. The English Civil War had ended only 136 years before the Constitutional Convention of 1787. That war was marked by long years of violence, including religious-motivated atrocities among Puritans, Anglicans. 136 years is not very long on the scale of human history. Some of us here tonight had grandparents who were alive 136 years ago. The founders had this and other instances of religious excess on their minds when they gave us the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution in 1791. Right there in the First Amendment, they created what Tom liked to call a wall of separation. Federal government would never interfere with any citizen's freedom of conscience. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress. Now, for how plural it is and how tolerant we are. And we have those few terse words about religious freedom to thank for a lot of that. Words to thank for decades of. That debate's what I want to talk about tonight, and especially about a small part of it that's very much alive. And at the First Amendment, you'll see it originally applied to Congress by the 14th Amendment, which extended most of the Bill of Rights so it would apply to state governments. And it also includes the famous Equal Protection, which guarantees everyone in every state the equal protection of the laws. The religious language in the First Amendment has two distinct clauses. Congress shall make no law, one, respecting and establishing the free exercise thereof. In very broad terms, the first of those, the Establishment Clause, says because the federal government is endorsing religion just by allowing that cross, a religious symbol, to stay up on federal land. So, does the cross offend the Establishment Clause? A New England town includes a creche as part of a Christmas display on a public square. A Santa Claus items. Does this violate the Establishment Clause? Subjects. Is that okay under the Establishment Clause? Well, these scenarios for making these decisions came out of a case from 1960. Every lawyer in the audience recognizes this. This was one of the cases in financial assistance to parochial schools. Chief Justice at the time, Warren E. Burger, the criterion that's ever after been known as the Lemon Test for deciding whether a law is okay or whether it crosses the Establishment Clause. Does the law have a valid, non-religious purpose? Yes or no? Looking at the primary effect of the law, is it neutral religion? Yes or no? Does the law avoid overly entangling the government with religious matters or religion? If all three answers are yes, how do you think each one of those would remember? Ask three things: purpose, effect, and entanglement. And now set that aside for a minute and ask a different question. What does your gut tell you about each of these things. Okay or not okay? We've had the Lemon Test in the body of legal precedent for 55 years. But the conservative majority on today's Supreme Court, the historical approach, would people have thought that the law was unconstitutional in 91, time when the Anglican Church was still the official church? It is being forced on anyone. And whether religious groups are getting, this brings us to the case Nathan versus Alamo, to the Supreme Court docket. At issue is a law of Texas, which says a copy of the Ten Commandments has to be prominently posted in every public school classroom in the state. Now, for most of us, it's been a long time since we last opened a Bible. So, here is the full text that Texas wants to put up on those classroom walls. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make to thyself. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor thy father. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. In federal district court. But the school district appealed to the Court of Appeals for the FNA and Mississippi. Now, the Supreme Court applied the Lemon Test, struck down the law as unconstitutional because all 17 judges heard the appeal in the Texas case, and by a bare majority, 9-8, they upheld the law as constitutional. Does the law at issue resemble a founding? Does it rise to the level of appointing an authority? Answered no. Just having the Ten Commandments, their services. So, was the Lemon Test jettisoned 4 years in the Bremerton case? In applying the historical approach for even longer, by reference to historical practices and under history and faithful coach a public school employee to kneel in prayer on the faith, he was exercising his First Amendment rights of free speech and religion in violation of the Establishment Clause. One part of the First Amendment pitted against another. Clear-cut case. Now, Nathan v. Alamo, the Texas Ten Commissionally, I'm sure that those 9 judges in the majority on the Fifth Circuit want to see that case go to the Supreme Court once and for all. What if they do? Well, those plaques of the Ten Commandments will not much harm will come from that, except asking, what does covet thy neighbor's wife mean? But there are much bigger issues at stake. Without the Lemon Test, in state-level laws, somebody's view of religion. What scares me about that is that those plaques on the classroom walls need one more commandment if they are honestly meant to represent American values. How to exercise tolerance toward thy neighbor, respecting his religion and his race, sex, gender, sexual orientations that are none of anybody else's business. Honor that, and we honor when the walls of government buildings are used to promote a single religious view. And where does it end? One day it's the next day, it could be in courthouses, police stations, government offices. I'm afraid the message it sends is, we, true believers, have the government's backing. We are in the right first step on a road that leads to widespread and powerful safeguarding. Maybe, if the Supreme Court does take up Nathan v. Alamo, they can find something better. Or maybe they can revive the Lemon Test as something to fall back on when they're historic. Try this. Reach out for her instead. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Marty. I think you've left us with a lot to think about, and we'll all have an opportunity to share our thoughts with you in a few moments. We're going to conclude our service now, but first, please rise for Kiddush on page 95.
Page 55. Page 55.
55. That's without the glasses.
Sarim Randaran Rabotai, Barotai, Barotai, Elohim Melech Haolam, Borei Peri Hagafen, Baruch Atah Adonai Elohim Melech Haolam, Asher Kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, Rasho be'ahava uvratzon inchilanu, Yat Mitzrayim, Kivanu v'acharta, Ve'otanu kidashta, Mikol hamim, Ve'shabat chodshecha, Ve'ahava uvratzon, Hinchaltanu, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. We'll continue with Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedulah, shelo asanu sot, velo samanu dama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, umishtachavim umodim, Lifnei melech malachei hamalachim hakad shehu note shamayim ve'yosera shamayim mima'al u'shechinatu zo begovhei meromim hu Eloheinu einod emet malkeinu efesulato kato Ve'adata hayom ve'hashevota elevavechayim mima'al ve'al haaretz mitachat einod al ken ikavel Adonai Eloheinu. Kakatu betoratecha Adonai imloch leolam va'ed Bene'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz Bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. This Shabbat, we remember the earth sites for the up of Martin Herman, John Nunemaker, Morris Donald Kaufman. And if there's anyone else you are remembering, please take a moment to remember them in your mind and in your heart. May their memory be for goodness and for a blessing. With Mourner's Kaddish, page 58. Yit Gadal ve'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divara Kirute ve'amlich Malchute, V'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam olalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yithalal Shemei rata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma. Yehei Shalama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. You may be seated.
I'd like to conclude the service before we do Yigdal with a prayer for our country, and I hope you'll all join me. We're going to read the alternative prayer on page 177, Inequality. May each of us fulfill generosity and gratitude, ever conscious of freedom, ever mindful of our duties to one another. Bless those who hold public office, exercise their responsibility, wisdom, fairness, and justice for all. Fill them with love and kindness. Bless them that they may walk with integrity on the paths of peace and righteousness. Creator and protector of all, watch over our armed forces and all those entrusted with our safety as they daily put their lives at risk to protect us and our freedom. Be with them in times of danger, as well as insight to do what is right in your eyes. For us all, with the gifts of love and courage, that we may create a world that reflects your glory. May we each respond to the charge of your prophet. For what does Adonai demand of you but to act justly, to love kindness, and keep us in safety? And let us say,
okay. Just a few announcements tonight for Kiddush Luncheon. Tomorrow's luncheon is sponsored. Tomorrow morning we're also having a monthly donation of $10, which is asked for to help pay for the refreshments. The religious school is currently accepting registration and enrollment for the fall term. Reach out to Judith Siegel, our education director, for the registration form and for information. This Sunday, we're having a special meeting of the congregation. That begins at 1:15 p.m. The purpose is to formally elect our new president and vice president. Voting can only, this is not correct. Voting can be done in person. We invited people to also request the link in order to do that. Let's see. This special congregation, I expect it'll be over about. He'll be playing by holy days. You can order honey for Rosh Hashanah and support our community and share wishes for a healthy, happy, and sweet New Year by sending an 8-ounce jar of kosher honey. The cost is $18. The order deadline is September 4th. And for more information about any of our upcoming events, contact the main office, check the shofar, or visit our website. And once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you after services for a dessert. Shabbat Shalom.
thank you, Marty. This time, we'll sing Yigdal.
Al Elohim chai ve'ishtabach, Al Elohim chai ve'ishtabach, Nimtza v'yeinei el metziuto, Echad ve'in yachid ke'yichudo, Me'elam ve'gam min sof le'achduto, Ein lo demut haguf ve'eino guf, Lo na'aroch elav kedushato, Kanmon lechol davar asher nivra, Rishon ve'ein rishon netano, Setarenu be'kadmato, Gomel le'ish chesed kemifalo, Noten rasha ra kerishato, Yishlach lekitz yamin meshichenu, Livdok mechakekes Yeshuato, Meitim yichayel berodei ad Shem tehilato me'el berov chasto, Baruch adei ad Shem tehilato. Shabbat Shalom.
Be kind, be respectful, and above all else, be tolerant. See you downstairs.
Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbat.